Okay, Bezrat Hashem, we continue in our learning today in the merits of the idea of soldiers, of all the hostages. Today we heard good news about potential five more that might be in the works. Bezrat Hashem, we should pray for that. We should learn the merit of Idan ben Chaim,
Tamir ben Yoram,
Hayal ben David. Also to the Neshama should have an aliyah for Yaakov ben Yosef, Dina bat Yaakov. Rosanna bat Clementina and Ishaya, and Asher ben Agnes, may the Neshama have an Aliyah. May they have Nachat Ruach by us learning here in the Beth Knesset and trying to grow in our connection to Hashem. And Bezrat Hashem, we should see a lot of great miracles coming up to our lives soon. So we're starting today an interesting series. So we basically are going to start a series that's called 13, the number 13. The number 13 has a lot of different explanations in the Torah. There's the 13 Middot Rachamim of Hashem. There's the 13 praises that we say in Ishtabach. There's the number 13 in Judaism in general, what it means. Today we're going to learn about a very good principle in the Torah, which is called the 13 Ikarim B'Yem Torah Nidreshet, the 13 principles that we learn the Torah through. So we use these 13 tools, and we're going to learn the Torah in this way. And it helps us understand it better. And it helped more than us. It used to be our sages and the Chachamim of like the Rishonim, the Achronim. They used these understandings, or they used these main principles and tools or concepts to go ahead and interpret if it's the Torah, if it's the Rashi, if it's the understanding of the Torah Shabbat when they were about to write it down. And hopefully we get to understand something about it. So I think that today's class, to begin, starts with the idea of a context, right? It all depends on the context. So when we go ahead and we are approaching and maybe going ahead and having a conversation with someone, we're going to speak with him in the context of that conversation. If, let's say, I'm speaking to someone secular, I might have a conversation that will be more introductory. If I'm talking to someone who's been learning for 30 years now, the context will be different, and so forth. So now we're trying to understand that the way that we use these principles is almost like a person now enters into his car. You walk in, you sit down in the car, you sit down in your seat, you open up your phone, you're looking at the maps, Waze, Google Maps, whatever you use, and you start to input your address, the address you want to go to. You wait for it to load, and only once it's ready, it shows you, okay, here's my route, it takes me 37 minutes to get there, whatever the case may be. Then I start to drive. And a lot of times people go in their journey, in the Torah journey, and they start driving. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how long it's supposed to take. I don't know what are the steps on the way. I don't know how to interpret what I'm reading. And they basically are going in a limbo. And you can go, the example I thought about was in our neighborhood, right? You go ahead and there's all these small streets, these cul-de-sacs, there's up in the mountains, you go to the left, it's one thing, up to the right, it's a different thing. If I know someone new who just moved to the neighborhood, and you tell me, oh, come to my house, it's in this and this street. If I tell him that it doesn't have maps, he's going to be lost. He's going to be all, scrambling around between the small streets. But what happens if it's someone who's been living here for 30 years? For him, what do you mean? Of course, I know the streets. Oh, it's easier. Just take a right, you take a left. I see it with like the let's say 2 generations back. Right? When I come in, I usually open up my Waze and I go everywhere, almost everywhere I use the maps for. But you see the older generation that's in Shul, they come and say, oh, you take a right and then you take a left on Lynette and then you go up on the Ventura Boulevard, and you look at them like, no, please just give me the address, I'll put it in Waze. So this is what we're trying to get today. We're trying to get an idea of how do we get the address, right? How do we get the map to understanding what we're doing, and how do we get the map to understanding how to interpret everything that we read. So there's a concept that the Mesilat Yesharim, the duties of the path of the just, comes in and speaks about. It's called Gana Mevucha. And this idea comes in the chapter of vigilance, right? Of being cautious and what it means to be cautious. And it speaks about different categories of people you should stay away from, and people that you should not come closer to. And then he comes in and tells us like this. He says, what is it similar to, this whole journey that we spoke about now? It's similar to Gana Mevucha. It's basically a garden that is a maze. And what is this maze? This maze is meant, what is it used for? for people's amusement, right? It creates it for people to have fun. They walk in the maze, I don't know where I'm going. Now let's go this way, let's go that way. And he says that the purpose is to get to one specific place in the middle of the maze, right? That we're supposed to go there, and there's a prize there, or there's maybe like a meeting point, or whatever the case may be, that I need to reach. If I know, if I understand where I'm going, right? Let's say a person could go and do it by trial and error. I can fail and try again, fail and try again. Or what happens if I go with a guide that goes and takes me through this journey? Or I have a map that shows me the maze. Is it not going to be much, much easier? It's going to be a breeze, right? A few seconds, okay, right, left, right, and I got it. And this is really where we're trying to get to. And when we're starting to look at the refinement of our character, refinement of our midot, we're supposed to start by immediately touching these type of concepts, because if I'm not, I'm just basically me now trying to carve a rock and make it into a statue with a fork. It's not going to work. So it's basically the way that we'll calculate it is, let's say now Albert started in the 10th floor, right? And he goes ahead and started the tshuva journey and try to understand. And maybe Mitch started it on the 7th floor, and maybe Ruby started on the 26th floor. When we start our journey, it's not only that we start at a certain place, we need to start understanding, okay, from this place, how do I get to the 11th floor? How do I get to the 14th floor? No. And when a person finishes his life, we're measured at the end of the day about what was my delta. What is the delta? Is what is the progression I made. So let's say I made from 10 to 12. I went up 2 steps in my whole lifetime. But what if I made from 7 to 11? I went 4 steps. Who grew more during his lifetime? Perhaps Mitch in this case. So we want to always see, first of all, that I grow from the place that I'm in right now. And also, I want to see how much can I grow from the place that I'm in. So some people will grow up in Mea Shearim, and for them, understanding Shas, understanding Mishnayot, understanding Halachot is like, they know it from the age of 6. For us to go ahead and understand what Rashi and the Shimoni and the Meiri are saying now, and what is the Tosfot saying about this Mishnah and this Halach and this Gemara, it's going to be like Chinese to us, or for some. So we're just trying to go and walk up these steps and try to understand what is my delta. How much do I grow in my lifetime? And God is going to look at and check how much you started, where you ended it. And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot tells us, Da me'ayin bata ve'lahem ata holech. ולפני מי אתה עתיד לתן דין וחשבון. So he tells us, in Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, know where you came from and know where you're going. Basically, it tells us, where do you come from? You came in from a drop of semen. From a semen that became rotten, and then from there grew life. And where are you going? You're going in front of Hashem, in front of the judgment, in front of the greatest of the kings, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to be accounted for the journey that you went through. So how much more it's important for us to try to understand what's our traits, where are we standing, what should we refine, how do we refine them, and what are the tools that we can use. So if we look at it, this perspective is similar. There's a story that I heard. My first Masechet that I ever finished was Masechet Ta'anit back in New York. My Rabbi Shippo took me to a whole journey with Masechet Ta'anit. I was really in the beginning of understanding even what it's Torah, and he made it so exciting, so enthusiastic, and I was able to go ahead and complete it. End of the year, he took us to Lakewood to do a Siyum Masechet. So he took us to like this event, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 people there, the yeshiva and everyone, and they sit there, and all of a sudden the Rosh Yeshiva tells us a story about a camel. And he says, a camel comes up to his mom and tell her, Mom, why do I have these big eyelashes? So she tells him, son, because when you go up in the desert, you will go for miles and miles and miles. You want to make sure that the sand doesn't bother you in your eyes, so you can see where you're walking. He says, oh, that's nice. That's good to know. But what about my humps that I have on my back? Why do I need these? So she tells him, oh, you go and you walk for all these miles and miles. Sometimes there's no water there. Sometimes you don't know the journey. So it basically is there to provide you all your nutrients and all your water and all your supplies that you need. He says, oh, that's amazing. Wow, that's really nice. And then why do I have these big, long legs? So she tells him, when you walk on the sand. Sometimes it's really, really hot. So these long legs go and protect you from being too hot from the sun that radiates on the sand. So they go ahead and they have this conversation. He tells her, this is all really, really nice. But how am I going to use it if I'm locked up in a zoo? So the idea is this: is it's a story about a funny animal that goes and talks to his mama a camel. But what we understand from it is we need to first of all understand who we are. Once we understand who we are, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to start refining the place that we're standing in and grow in this and in these steps step by step. And then we're moving on to the Chafetz Chaim, right? There's a book about Shmirat HaLashon, and he goes ahead and he speaks about let's say I want to go ahead and I want to speak and say something about someone. How can I approach it and how do I say it? And how maybe I want to give criticism, maybe I want to discuss about a certain issue. So he says, "Hakol lefi madrigat ha'adam." It's all based on the level that a person is at. There's things who are considered lashon hara when they're said about a different person, while they're even נחשבים אפילו כשבח לגבי אדם אחר. So let's say now I'm trying to say something that's a praise for a person, but because that person is not in that same status, it's actually something that's a derogatory. What's the example he gives here? He says on a business person, he says, wow, look at him, he's learning 5 hours of Torah. That's something beautiful, right? It's something nice. You look at it in a high value. But what if you come in and you say the same exact phrase about a avrech, about a Talmid Chacham? Then the 5 hours doesn't seem so amazing. He's lazy, he's learning only 5 hours. So it's all the relativity. Then he comes in and says in the following page, he says that we talk about the midot of a different person, דוגמה שכיחה לאמירה אובייקטיבית שיש בה משום דיבור בגנותו של אדם, היא האמירה שהוא פלוני הוא בעל מידות רעות. Now he speaks about, let's say I want to say something bad about someone else, right? So he says, for example, you shouldn't say about someone that is easily being angered or someone who's cheap and the likes. That's of course. But when you say that someone is bad, these are derogatory. Rather, he comes in and tells us, אין זה לשון הרע וייתכן שאפילו מותר לרמוז על מישהו שמידותיו ממוצעות. If you're not talking about someone who is average in where he stands, that he says that is allowed. And when does he say that? He says, אף אם אין זה בא לשבחו. Even if it doesn't come to praise him, but it comes to show his real value. Let's say now I'm doing an evaluation. I have my students in school, and I'm trying to give them a good criticism of where they stand right now. So when I say it, or when I discuss it with the school, with the rest of the teachers, it's not me coming to be derogatory. It's me coming to reflect where is the situation, and that's the reflection that we need to do first of all. When we understand that, then first of all we see it. All of us, I think, in this room, for the most part, we chose to live a life of Torah, right? So if we understand that we choose to live a life of Torah, then we need to also understand how we do it, right? So if, let's say, I believe that God is one, I think we spoke about last time, yes. Do you believe that Torah was written by God? Yes. Do you believe that that the Torah includes all these commandments, the positive and the negative that we should do? Yes. So comes into the end question, why are you not doing it? Why are you not taking the steps to actually perform what the book is telling you? And today we're going to go and dig deeper into it and see what are the different traits that we have. So if you want to look, Rabbi Ishmael comes in and says, let's see which page is it on the Siddur itself.
48.
48? Okay, so page 48. You can pass, maybe you can share some.
Rabbi Ishmael. It's interesting. I don't know if it relates, but since we were on maps, I heard recently, everything has to relate a little bit. I heard recently Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg from the book Ratan Synagogue, he said he was going to a wedding. Someone called him and said, don't take the 10 freeway, whatever the freeway was. He's like, I know, I have Waze. I already put it in. He's like, the people said, we don't use Waze. So he said that they were in like an hour and a half jam. That was easily avoidable if you used the maps. So he said, he's like, not to compare it to God, he's like, Waze is like the God of the maps. He's like, it's in the air, it sees all the things that are going on from the top, and it tells you, like, there's an accident here, don't use it. But he said, just like we think we know exactly what's going on, God sees like a clear picture from the top. He says, don't go this way, it's not going to be a good way. You think it's going to go a good way because you think you know the way. But it's not like that. It was like interesting, just the maps thing, very simple but Rabbi Goldberg says he always uses Waze. Like now, even if you go to downtown LA, but you say, of course, I know the way. But there's like 3 different options in the morning. One could be 2 hours, one could be 45 minutes if you don't use the Waze.
Exactly that. And I think that it's in a sense, it's a practice in humility. Because when we go ahead and we say, I know everything, I don't need to learn, I know the way. Then a lot of times you go ahead and you realize, okay, I know the way, but I messed up. I know the way, but I'm still taking the wrong turn that I shouldn't be taking. So you know the way, it's very nice. You know the halachot, it's very nice. You know that the Torah is meaning 1, 2, and 3. But if I don't dig deeper, if I don't constantly reinforce it, if I don't constantly open the ways and see, am I still in the right direction? Am I still in the best path? You're going to keep hitting those speed bumps. You're going to keep hitting trials. We had the discussion about it on Shabbat, that a person has everything predetermined to him. To begin with, everything is infinite and everything is, it's the introduction to the Zohar. And he speaks about the beginning, everything is infinite, everything is perfect, everything is light. Then the world was created into 2 situations. One is choosing Torah and mitzvot. One is choosing nisyonot ve'isurim, like trials and sorrow. The end line is always going to be the Olam Haba, the next world, and it's always going to be when your soul is refined. If it's going for Chas v'Shalom Gehenom, if it's going Chas v'Shalom for Yisurim, if it's going Chas v'Shalom or Baruch Hashem for Torah and Mitzvot. You're going to go through the journey, but you choose you go right or left. And if I'm now going ahead and I'm thinking that I know better than someone else, then I'm constantly going to go ahead and emit these Yisurim. So he tells us, like, hold on for a second, let's learn, let's see what are the ways, and from there we're going to avoid all these people. So basically, we have Likutei Halachot by Rabbi Natan, and this is going to be the last one, then we're going to jump into the actual 13. So Likutei Halachot by Rabbi Natan speaks that a person who goes into Pesach, in Passover, which we're now entering, he basically needs to go ahead and by giving the tzedakah and by giving the sacrifice, he's fixing something that was the sin of the first, the Adam Rishon, of the first man. What did he basically decree on us? We have to go ahead and work hard, and we have to go ahead and give from ourselves in order to go ahead and sustain ourselves. In the sweat of your nose, in the sweat of your emotions, in the sweat of your midot, your 13 traits, for example, you're going to go ahead and eat the bread. So it comes in and basically tells us here, these 13 is by us going ahead and using these 13 traits, by us using these 13 methods, we're sweetening the judgment. We're going to go ahead and we're going to work hard one way or another. It's not going to change. You're going to have struggles and challenges in life no matter what. It might be sweetened, it might be lesser, but it's going to be there. And how do we make it sweeter? How do we make it less powerful? By going ahead and refining with the 13 tools that we have today and with the principle of the number 13. So let's start with all of them. So Rabbi Ishmael comes in and tells us, ב-13 midot התורה נדרשת בהם. In 13 midot, in 13 measures, the Torah is being taught. The first one is kal vachomer. Kal vachomer is basically, if we went ahead and we were strict in one case, then we should definitely go ahead and be strict on the case that's a bit more severe. That's the light case. We're definitely going to be more strict on the case that is more strict. And the example that I found was in Parashat Va'era, and Moshe says to Hashem, "Hen bnei Israel lo shamu alai." Bnei Israel did not listen to me. Moshe says to Hashem, and how would Paro listen to me? So if the sons of Israel did not listen to me when I spoke with them about the redemption, about going the exodus of Egypt and everything, how would God go ahead and listen? And how would the Paro going to listen to me? So it basically tells you, if this is obvious to me, then this is definitely going to be obvious to me. So that's the first principle. Sorry?
This is what?
This is kal vachomer.
I was learning on Sunday with the rabbi in the Gemara. There's an English word for this. I have to look it up. I was like, what is this? He's like, that's a kal vachomer.
Kal vachomer?
What is it called?
What's the other one word you said? You said it's in English, I think.
Sorry?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Just say the last sentence.
It's
You said again.
That basically Moshe says to Hashem, he says to him, if now the sons of Israel, Bnei Israel, did not listen to me when I told them you're going to be redeemed by God, you're going to be saved now, how will Paro listen to me when I go and tell him, please let my people go? That's basically what he's telling us. So that's the first one. Then comes in and tells us the second one is Gzera Shava. What is Gzera Shava? Is when the Torah has an identical word or has similarity in two different matters, you can learn the halachot from one matter to the other matter. And he gives us, what is an example? You see the word bemu'ado, at his time, in two places. When we go ahead and we sacrifice the korban tamid, which we spoke about 1 or 2 classes ago, what is that? The daily sacrifice that we have to continue to give in the Bet HaMikdash. And rather, if not, then we read it on a daily basis. And on the other hand, and about the korban of Pesach, the sacrifice that we give in Passover. So Chazal or sages learn that the same way that the korban of the Tamid is pushing off Shabbat, meaning we're still going to go ahead and sacrifice, so does in Passover, we go ahead and it pushes off the Shabbat. So meaning we still do the korban on Shabbat as well. So that's Gzera Shava. So if in this case and this case they're similar, we're going to go ahead and we're going to sentence it similar in a similar manner. Then you have something called Mibinyan Av Mikatuv Echad or Mibinyan Av Mishte Ktuvim. There's a rule, and the Torah goes ahead and it's giving us some sort of a new explanation about that rule. We say that this rule is only true not in the same principle that we taught from it, but also in other examples. So let's say now I'm telling you that Albert is a good craftsman. So that means he knows how to work with creating items with woodwork. So he comes in and he wants to teach us that not just in woodwork, but also if he needs to do knitting, also if he needs to now fix up iPhones and so forth. It's an iffy example, but meaning he's a very crafty person and he can do one example. He comes to tell us here that not just one example is true, but actually more instances are true. What is the example he gives us here? This is basically coming in and teaching us the main principle and then an example from it. And what we see here is when it says about Pesach, again Passover, that you're allowed to go ahead and do melachot. You are allowed to work in works or cooking the food, right? For the ochel nefesh, it's called. So there we also learn about the different moadim, about the different holidays. So if in Pesach it's allowed, I also understand that it's in Sukkot and in Shavuot it's allowed as well. You understand the example? You understand the concept? Yeah. So yes, no.
That's how we do it just with the Shalosh Regal and no other holidays, or what?
So he comes in about Mu'adim, or the Mu'adim. Mu'adim is the holiday. So basically, he comes and tells us this example. He tells us that we are allowed to go ahead and cook in Passover for ourselves to eat at the same day. And then he says that because it's true in Passover, we're decreeing, the sages decreed, it's also allowed in different holidays. So basically, you take one example and you go and derive it to other examples as well. Then he comes in and tells us Miklal Ufrat, a rule and the detail of the rule. So Kasha Torah Potachat B'Tiur Kolei, it speaks with a general explanation, and then it goes into the details. So you see, this one is the number 4. And then he tells us an example when the Torah speaks about the species that we can bring as korbanot, as sacrifices. The Torah speaks about from the behemah, from the animal, but from the cattle. But it doesn't go ahead and it speaks about what type of cattle, which one, a goat, a lamb, a sheep. And then it goes and it brings us min habakar and min hatzon. So it goes and specifies to you specifically. You can bring from the cow, you can bring from the goat, you can bring from the sheep, and so forth. So we become more specific. So I start with a general rule, and then I give more explanations. So a lot of times when you look at the Gemara, right, you see a Mishnah. Maybe you see it in the Daf Yomi. So you see a rule, and you see the Mishnah, and the Mishnah is very short and brief, and sometimes it's very unclear to us. But once we start to dig into the Gemara, it gives us these different examples, and then it connects the concept in our head, and we can say, okay, now I understand. Now it's clear to me. Then the 5th one is Miprat.
Sorry, so can you give me an example of this one? So you got something.
The example we gave is the Torah tells us that you can go ahead and take from the animal to go ahead and give as a sacrifice. From an animal. It doesn't give us what type of animal. Then when you go a bit deeper afterwards, it comes in the next parsha, tells you from the bakar and from the tzon, which is from the cow and from the sheep. So it gives you like a specific, these are allowed for you to go ahead and use as sacrifice. So not just giving you a general concept, but actually going into the details.
So the Torah gave you a generalization in one.
So I'll tell you, you're a basketball player. You're a basketball player and you're allowed to play basketball on the court. And then I'm going into more details, but you're playing now a point guard or a shooting guard. These are your positions. So I'm giving you like the more specifics. So I'm starting with the general, and then I'm getting more into the details to make sure that you understand exactly how it works and how it's refined for your perfect fit, so to speak.
I guess I don't understand the relationship between the generalization and the detail. It's like just two separate facts that, like, is there a shava? I understand. It's like this one and this one, they're two next to each other. How does klal and prat?
So we want to perhaps go ahead and give you an understanding about what do we sacrifice in general. What do we sacrifice? So it then tells you you sacrifice animals. You don't sacrifice plants. You don't sacrifice living dead object. Okay, fine. But then you're trying to understand what does it mean. I understand I need to sacrifice animals, but when I'm about to go ahead and sacrifice animals, am I going ahead to sacrifice lizards, snakes, or birds, or what? So it gives you the explanation to make sure that you're very, very clear on what is specifically the animal that you're supposed to sacrifice. Does that make more sense a bit? Yeah. So it's ways that we go ahead and we learn and that we learn from the psukim. How do we actually practically behave in the day-to-day? Yeah.
And that's how all the laws are given, with the generalization, then the specification.
Now he comes in and tells us the flip side. Now he tells us mifrat to miklal. So there's another way to go ahead and learn, which is the exact opposite. It's confusing, but then we need to see. We saw it in the last week's parsha. We have chachmei lev, right? We have people who have the emotional understanding of situations. Okay, now I'm understanding that this is the general rule. Now I understand these are the details of the rule. In some cases, you see examples and you say like, okay, but where is the main rule here? And then you find it out later on in the Gemara, in the Shulchan Aruch. So it says to us like this. This is the opposite. The Torah starts with the details and finishes with the general title, the general main theme. And then what is the example he gives us? When the Torah goes and talks to us about Hashavat Aveda, about returning a lost object. This is actually something we're learning with my students in Baba Kama. So when we go ahead, first of all, we talk about the details, right? That a person finds a donkey and in front of it finds the clothing of a person. He goes ahead and talks to us about different outfits, or I found his phone, I found his necklace. What are you talking to me about all these individual items? Give me the general rule. You find something that was lost, go ahead and bring it back. So he comes in and gets to us later and continues. And you're going to do the same to everything that your brother has lost or your fellow has lost. So I started with details, your ox, or not your ox, your donkey and your dress or your outfit. And then I go ahead and I speak about all the rest. So what is it trying to tell us? And he went to explain to us that the donkey, the outfit, are only examples for us to understand the better picture. Sometimes when you hear a drasha, right, the rabbi uses one or two examples to make a big concept clear. He's not going to use now 50 examples. He could. They might be true to it. There's a story in the Gemara we read about Baba Kama, and it speaks about cases that a person is chayav b'dinei shamayim, but not chayav b'dinei adam. So he's obligated in the heavenly court, but he's not obligated in a human court. So in heavens he's obligated, but here if he goes to I don't know LA courts up here in Van Nuys, nothing's going to happen to him. And you see these four cases that he talks about he gave the fire to a miner, or he goes ahead and he bended the crop next to the fire, or went ahead and had the animal gore in a different field. Gives four examples. But then comes the Gemara and asks us about more cases. What about when your camel goes and drops in the middle of the street in Reshut Arabim, in a public domain, and then he went ahead and he causes damage? Are you liable? You try to pick up your camel. What happens now if, let's say, you put poison in front of a dog, but you don't feed the poison to the dog? You just put it there, but the dog went ahead and he ate it afterwards. Are you liable? Yes. So he gives us a numerous amount, and maybe 5-6 examples. But then he comes in and says, but these are the main examples that give you the understand. So all these can go on and on and on, but he just gives us 1 or 2 examples to understand the general rule. That is the concept here. Then this one gets a bit tricky. It says, klal ufrat uklal, a rule, a detail, and a rule. Iyatadan ela ke'en prat. You're not going ahead and judging when you're trying to make a conclusion, only based on the actual item, on the actual specific detail. So he comes and tells us like this. These are conditions that the Torah is starting with a general explanation, with a general rule, and then he goes into the details, and then he comes back and finishes with another rule. When it goes like this, it speaks about, I'm trying now to go ahead and explain the details. Through the details, I'm trying to understand the rule. But I can only understand it if I'm using two rules then. What is the example? Because this one is a bit more complex. He says, when the Torah describes the things that we can buy in the money, it's called Maser Sheni, right? You have what is Maser Sheni? Maser Sheni. Every person gives Maser, right? You give 10%. Maser Sheni is when a person says, you know what, I want to give more for myself. I'm going to give 20%. So with the first 10%, you're supposed to go ahead and give it to, let's say, you have the circles of tzedakah, right? First you give to your family, then the poor people in your community, then your shul for your community, then you can go ahead and give it to other communities, you give it to chesed, you give it to Talmidei Chachamim who are maybe learning in a different place. So you go and you have a progression there. And then Maser Sheni goes ahead and he gives us more options to it. So what he is saying to us is, first of all, he gives us a rule that says, "V'natata hakesef b'kol asher ta'ava nafshecha." You give the money whichever way you want. Then he comes in and tells us and says, in cattle, in sheep, in wine, in liquor, okay? And then he comes ahead and he comes back to it, "V'b'kol asher tishalcha nafshecha," and whatever your soul wants, whatever you desire. So from here, it tells you that you can buy things. These are important, the cattle and the wine and the sheep, but you can also do other things. But these are a bit more important. And what is he telling us? That you need to give them, let's say I want to give something to the Bet HaMikdash, or I want to go ahead and give something for my Bet Midrash, I need to give things that will be a certain type. That's preferred. You can go ahead and give whatever you want, but these are preferred. You know how sometimes you go ahead and I see it with my wife, for example. She'll go ahead and she'll tell me, you know, honey, buy me whatever you want for my birthday. But you know, I really like this. You know, I really love these head covers. You know, but whatever you want. So what do you understand? What do you understand? But whatever you want. But these are really good. But, you know,
buy those head covers, you sleep on the couch.
Exactly. That's what you understand at the bottom line. But it's kind of like an open suggestion, but you know it's not an open suggestion. So in a sense, this is what we understand. Then the seventh one, מכלל שהוא צריך לפרט ומפרט שהוא צריך לכלל. This is a rule that you need to go ahead and have a detail in order to understand, and a detail that you need in order to understand it. So a rule that helps you understand the detail, and a detail that helps you understand the rule. A bit confusing, I know. I didn't say it's easy to do.
You're only halfway through.
You're only halfway. Then he comes in and tells us like this. It's a lot. So he tells us that this is basically something that helps me define the understanding of each topic. So he says like this, the example. There's kedusha in the firstborn animal. That the Torah comes and speaks about firstborn. But there's also a detail that speaks about a male animal and not just the firstborn. So the rule is basically the firstborn, but the detail is what? The male. And then he goes ahead and he gives us the opposite. The prat, another detail, it needs to be peterechem, that he was the first that came out of the womb. Right? For example, it's not, let's say he was born as a twin, but he came in second and the female came in with him, maybe 10 seconds before. It's not good enough. Even though they're both, so to speak, were born first, you have to make sure that he is the first one that came out of the womb. Okay, so it gives us the explanation. Then, and he gives us what is bechlal bechor. He comes and explains like this. He says, Yes, Bukdusha is the first one that came from the womb. Here's the rule, and the general rule is Bechor, is the firstborn. And from there, we understand that he's going to be born first. And you cannot go ahead and bring the Kedusha. You cannot go ahead and use the same spiritual energy from that animal if it was born the second. That's basically what he's come to tell us. And that example goes ahead also to the flip side. Who can explain to me the flip side gets bonus. Because
Wait, so what was the rule in Hebrew that we just said?
כלל שהוא צריך לפרט והפרט שהוא צריך לכלל. So a rule that needs in order to understand the item, the detail, and a detail that goes ahead and helps me explain the rule itself. Let's move on to the next one. These are the last ones are getting harder and harder. So we're moving up in the progression. כל דבר שהיה בכלל, everything that was in the rule, ויצא מן הכלל, and now we see something that's been, the general rule is such, but then I have this place, this item that's excluded from the rule. It doesn't teach about himself, but he comes in and teaches about the whole rule in general. Clear? Did I repeat it?
Yeah. No, it's clear.
Yeah. So it says this. Sometimes the Torah goes ahead and specifies in a generality, and in a different place it will go ahead and write the same judgment, but there it speaks about a private case. So now he goes ahead and gives us a rule. You give from let's look at the example he gives, but the Torah does it so that we look at that specific individual case and we can reflect it over the rule itself. So far so good. Yeah. So let's see the example. The Torah writes that whoever eats kodshim, the meat that's supposed to be pure and untamed, betuma, when he's impure, when he's now in tuma, he chayav bekaret. He's now needs karet. He needs to be decreed from the tree of life in spiritual realms. This is a general rule in Kodeshim. But then in a different place, the Torah talks about the same rule, but now it speaks only about shlamim, about a certain type of korban, a certain type of a sacrifice.
That's a kodshim also?
The shlamim. So it gives us shlamim. Kodshim is all of them, all of the sacrifices that we give, and then we eat from them. Now it gives us the specific example about shlamim, which is one type of korban that we give. But that comes in only to be said so that we understand the rule about the general sacrifices a bit better.
They give a specific rule to understand the general.
Yes. Again, I'm just giving you an example, but that's the idea. Then we have כל דבר שהיה בכלל, everything that was in the rule, the main rule, ויצא לטעון, and he goes out to claim something different. טוען אחד שהוא קניינו, יצא להקל ולא להחמיר. It goes ahead and is being excluded in order to go ahead and be more lenient and not to be more strict. So sometimes we have rules in the Torah that now you go ahead and you add more explanations, it only goes and limits us more. Right? So we say, and Kiddush and Shabbat, what do we say? And bincha v'bitcha v'amtecha v'gecha v'sha'arecha asher b'sha'arecha, meaning every single one of them is not allowed to go ahead and perform work on Shabbat. So you could start by just saying you should not work on Shabbat. Good. But now you go ahead and you reject this, you reject this, you reject this. All of a sudden you say to yourself, wow, this is so many limitations. So here he comes in and explains that's not the case. The exclusion here actually comes in and gives us something that is permissible. So this one goes into like the tzarat. You know what tzarat is? Leprosy. It goes into examples. If I'm doing this, we're not living today. So I'm really, I think it's because it's a lot. But the idea is like what I told you just now. It goes ahead and it gives you an example that is actually make it more lenient for us, rather than what we see on Shabbat. Then now we have something that's a bit more complex. It says, כל דבר שהיה בכלל, that's number 10. We only have 4 more. כל דבר שהיה בכלל, everything that was in the rule, ויצא לטעון, טוען אחר שלא קניינו, and he went to make a claim, or went to give us a specific example, יצא להקל ולהחמיר. It goes ahead and it gives us changes. In one condition, it's more lenient. In another condition, it will be more strict. Just to understand how much work the sages and the Chachamim had to do when they wrote the Tur, and when they wrote the Shulchan Aruch, and when they went ahead and tried to understand what the Mishnayot say. We go ahead and we, in essence, we're getting everything funsped to us. We're getting everything through the detail here. Just read it, you have the Schutenstein, you have the interpretations, you have the English translation, you can go ahead and everything is served to you. Think about the sages before, a few generations back, how much work they needed to do in order to understand, am I understanding it the right way, Am I saying it the wrong way? Is this example good for me, bad for me, lenient, strict? It's a whole ballgame. And there's a book called Mavola Talmud. This is I don't know if you ever seen this book. It's called the Introduction to the Talmud, Introduction to Gemara, and it's a whole book. Did I ever show you about the book? It's a book that looks like any of these art scrolls, and it goes ahead and gives us all of these principles and all the stories about all the Tanaim, the Rishonim, the Achronim, all these Rebbeim, and each one of them. Why was he unique? Why was he so smart? What was unique about him that he is the one who's decreeing the rules that I'm reading right now? And a lot of times when we understand the context, as we said earlier, it gives us the better picture much more, and we can relate to it better. So here it comes in and it tells us that the change comes in to either go ahead and make something more strict or more lenient. So the example is the leprosy. The Torah goes ahead and specifies the signs of tumah, of impurity, in the general rules. White hair, there's live flesh, there's a different place that I saw it in the same compound, but then it gives us a different sign, yellow hair. So it tells us that the lachmir, when we see the yellow hair, then we can go ahead and we can be strict about it when it comes to the head and the beard, and not when it comes to a different place. To be lenient, then it goes ahead and it tells us because it's yellow, it's only for the beard and the head. So that same rule, follow with me if you can, that same rule goes ahead and one way it goes ahead and tells us when it comes to the head and the beard, you have to be strict. But on the other hand, if you look at the flip side, it comes to tell us that it's for the head, for the beard, not for something else. Understand? Or so? Okay. We can listen to it again and it will sit better. 3 more. כל דבר שהיה בכלל, everything was in the rule. ויצא לדון בדבר החדש, and he went ahead and discussed the new topic. אי אתה יכול להחזירו לכללו. You cannot bring it back to the general rule, עד שיחזירנו הכתוב לכללו בפירוש. Until the pasuk comes in and intentionally goes ahead and returns it back to the rule. That tells us this is again relevant to the rule. What is the example? He says that sometimes the Torah goes and teaches us how to behave in a certain condition. And then it gives us a private condition, which is individual. It gives us different orders that are not like the general rule we'll just learn. We see it that the general rule would not be applied in that specific case, unless the Torah goes ahead and tells us otherwise. This is actually referring to it. What is the example? Parshat Tzav. The Torah tells us how do we deal with korbanot asham. Let's say I made a mistake. I did something wrong on Shabbat. I broke Shabbat purposely, right? Or not even purposely. Maybe if it's a shogeg, and I need to now go ahead and give a sacrifice. Now it tells us vezot torat asham. It tells us that there's asham metzora. It tells us in the Parshat Metzora afterwards that the asham is for the lepers. So it gives us an example about lepers is when we give this type of korban. Then it comes in and it tells us different examples about why specifically in this asham and with the lepers we have to deal with one way or another. And then it comes back and brings it to us. It brings it to us by saying to us that it gives us matan dam al tnucha ozen v'chule. It gives us instructions that we need to put the blood on the ear, and we need to put the blood on the toe and on the thumb. When you do that, you understand it is applied not just to the lepers, but it applies also to different cases. So it goes ahead and it connects the dots from one parsha to a different parsha, and then with the extra rule, it brings it all together. This one is a bit more confusing. Okay. The 12th one, דבר הלמוד מעניינו ודבר הלמוד מסופו. Something that is being learned from the matter itself, and something that's being learned from the conclusion or from the end of the matter. What is the example? It says in the 10 Commandments, you lo tignov, you should not steal. But now it comes in and we can ask a question. What are we stealing? What are we stealing? Are we stealing someone's life, or am I stealing someone's money?
Time.
Or time, right? That's also, but time might fall into the category of money.
Yeah.
Because as we know,
Time is money.
time is money. So he goes in and he tells us like this. The answer is gnevad nefashot, is let's say I stole someone's life. And where do we learn it from? Right next to the Lo Tignov, he comes in and tells us there's when we learn more about the prohibitions about Lo Tignov, we see next to him Lo Tirtzach, Lo Tinaf. So he gives us all these things that are going and discussing the soul of a person or the livelihood of a person. Don't kill, don't go ahead and commit adultery. So you understand it doesn't speak about his belonging. It speaks about him. Don't kill, don't steal. It speaks about don't steal his life, don't steal his well-being. So we understand it from what's next to it. Make sense? Then you have a different example. לא תגנוב, עוסק בעבירה שעונשה המוות. He speaks about penalties that you decree to die, and not in stealing money. And this is for this example. Then it comes in about halamut mesofo. It speaks again about the parsha of the lepers. It tells us that how do we behave with a person who saw that there's maybe something in his house, right? Leprosy in his house. So he tells us, נתתי נגע צרעת בבית ארץ אחוזתכם, ובא אשר לו הבית ויגיד לכהן. The Torah doesn't speak about which house we're talking about, what is it made of, but from the continuation, from the end conclusion of it, you can learn. ונתץ את הבית, את אבניו, את עצה ואת כל עפר הבית. So we understand that it speaks about a house that's made with rocks, that's made with wood, and made with, how do you call it, afar. So it's not exactly dust, it's cement, like stucco or something like that. Plaster? Plaster. So it gives us the explanation where, from the end of the pasuk. So it started with the rule, I don't understand exactly what you're talking about, but by the end of the pasuk, now I can understand it clearly. Make sense? Last one. Last one is שתי כתובים המכחישים זה זה. Two writings that are going ahead and contradicting each other. עד שיבוא הכתוב השלישי ויכריע ביניהם. Until two people are fighting, the third one is the winner. You know this phrase? It's in Hebrew. We have a phrase called שתיים רבים השלישי לוקח. Two people are fighting against each other. The third person is going to be the winner. Right? How many times I see it in sports a lot. You see two teams are fighting for playoff runs and they go and clash against each other. Or they go, let's say now, I don't know who here is following the NBA, but you see two teams now in the Western Conference Finals. They go up to a game 7, they clash at each other, they really give everything they have. This guy got injured, this guy got injured. They come into the finals, NBA finals, and both teams are already exhausted. One team advanced, but then the third team is waiting and just swooping the championship. I think we saw it last year, no? With the Boston Celtics taking over Dallas. For example, it was a clashing of two teams, then the third one went ahead and did it. So for this example, bring us back to the topic, we have two psukim that are saying two things that sound to us contradicting. We need a third one, a third party, to go ahead and bring it home. So let's see what's the example it gives us. So we have in Pasuk in Shmot, God speaks to Moshe me'ala kaporet, above the kaporet. What is the kaporet? Kaporet is basically the cover of the Aron. Then the cover of the Aron of the Kodesh in the Kodesh Kodeshim. The Aron, you know, and then in a different pasuk, Kadosh Baruch God speaks me'oel moed, from that oil moed. You know, oil moed is the tent where we'd go in and receive this conversation face to face at some point after the sin of the golden calf. But then this is a field that includes all of the Mishkan itself. This is an area that includes all the Mishkan. So this one says in the oil moed. This one says above the kaporet. Both of them doesn't make sense to me. So they come in and they tell us from the third pasuk, this is what we determine. Moshe comes into Oel Moed to speak with him, and would hear the voice speaking to him above the kaporet on the Aron Edut between the two curbs. That's the conclusion.
The only reason you know this is the winning one is because it mentions the other ones.
Correct. So it comes in and gives us these two psukim, and then the third one goes ahead and concludes everything together, and he fixes the problem for us. Now, a lot of times, so this is everything we have when it comes to the 13 Middot. So you see, I think today, how complex it gets And I think this one might be the most complex out of all the fours, because the rest of them are more about belief, about faith, about how do we observe the world. This one is very technical. And sometimes in the Torah, we need to have this balance. So some of the things are very technical and we have to do it very repetitively, almost like me now building a building. Now I need to put the beams, I need to put the argaman, I need to put the shesh and the shani, and all these materials that you see in the parshiyot. These week's parshiyos, the previous ones, and also Pkudei, you can read them and you get bored out of your mind. True or false?
Well, that's why people say you shouldn't have a most interesting, but the Joseph story is way more interesting than these parts.
True.
And there's a problem.
You see Bereshit speaks about the creation of the world and about these miracles and wonders and about the stars and the moon. It sounds really interesting. Then you coming into the technicalities, you plug in one beam with the other beam and you put the tarp this way and you cut it to this measurement and that measurement.
Boring.
Exactly. But what it teaches us is that at the end of the day, we need to also go ahead and do the work that we need to do as it goes with the steps that we need to take. Right? We have certain traits that we need to develop in our life. There's certain measures and limitations that we have to put, especially when it comes to there's differences that the Kabbalah speaks a lot about between a man and a woman. And what it comes and discusses is that the man is always the one who's influencing and the woman is the one who's receiving. It's always this way. A lot of times when it comes to Shlom Bayit conversations, the man always looks, at least to begin with, unless he's wise enough and he understands it. At some point, I think all of us understand. But you understand that I'm in this relationship, it's not a business deal. It's not a transaction. It's not I'm giving, I'm receiving. I'm giving A, I'm receiving B. I'm giving a smile, I'm receiving a smile back. Sometimes when your wife is pregnant and she goes ahead and she is upset now and she wants ice cream, you can give her 10 smiles. She's going to throw a shoe at you and tell you, give me the ice cream that I need.
On a good day.
On a good day. Now, I'm joking, of course, I'm exaggerating a bit. But the idea is a lot of times you give and you don't receive. A lot of times you go ahead and you see this, there's no clear transaction. But what we need to understand as men is that we're the ones who are supposed to give to this world. We're supposed to take the blessings that Hashem has given us, and we're supposed to spread it to our family. If we're fortunate, to our community. If we're very fortunate, to other communities. If we're very, very fortunate, we can be like the Millers that built this institution and others. I mean, you look at it, and the idea is I'm supposed to be a channel that's supposed to pass on. But with this channel, how do we become successful? How do we become a good, clear vessel? By cleaning up our acts, by making sure we have a strict schedule, by having times for Tefilah, by having maybe some steps for the prayer that we're supposed to have. We're progressing in the prayer in a certain order. That order is something that we're supposed to establish in our life. If we don't have that order, if we don't have these parameters that we live our life by, our life is going to be a limbo. And it says that the man is representing of order and the female is representing of chaos. It's so when you look at it, you say to yourself, that makes a lot of sense. But when you look a bit deeper, the women are the one who take us from our squareness, right? We live and we tend to be very like, okay, this is my boundaries. That's where I like to be. I like my chair like this. I like my meal like this. But the woman takes us and adds creativity. The woman takes us and adds, this sense of excitement to the world, adventurous to the world. And men usually, but again, we're going back to the way it's supposed to be according to the Torah, are supposed to be more of the ones who set the boundaries, who set the house, who build the nest. If you look at nature, a lot of times, they build up the house in a certain way. You look at the way that we work right now. Who is usually the one who's supposed to be, and we're talking about the prehistorical man. The man is the provider. The woman is the one who builds the home, but she builds the home with wisdom. She goes ahead and she adds the creativity. She adds the special touches. But that's what makes the house so special. If the house just looks white and clear and all the walls are straight and set, then you're going to go to a house that's very cold and very, in a sense, very dead. What brings the life to the house? The woman. So when we understand that, when we understand these rules, now things starts to make more sense to us. And now when we go ahead and we work for a certain structure, it's not enough that we get excited to love Hashem, and I'm excited and I'm a chassid and I love him and I want to connect to him and I want to go to a tish and I want to go and drink l'chaim, and this is so much fun, and I'm getting inspired every single week by the drashot of Rabbi Horowitz. It's amazing. But where is my work? Where is my step-by-step progression? And that, I think, is something we all should ask ourselves. And this is something that hopefully we can get out from this class with the structure of how to do it, of how to understand concepts and how to build up my vessel. The same way that Noach built his ark, step by step, beam by beam, the same way we should build our own ark for our own home, Bezrat Hashem, with these concepts.
My rabbi said when I got married, marriage is give and take. You give and she takes.
Yes, yes, yes.